Okay, so good morning, everyone. Our discussion for the day is going to be on linear equations, changing the standard form to slope-intercept form and vice versa. So the linear standard form is in the form of ax plus by equals c, and the slope-intercept form is in the form of y equals mx plus. All right, so for our example number one, I want you to change the standard form to slope-intercept form, and that is the 2x plus 3y equals 6. What you wanted to do is to make sure that your y is isolated and by itself, and all the rest are on the other side. So if you look at this y, so the first thing I'm gonna do is to make sure that I split up my space into left and right. So the way to do that is to put the equal sign. So that's your first step. Put the equal sign. And then you want the y to be by itself. So you're going to copy this down, 3y. That's a positive. I don't have to write the positive y. That's understood. The 2x, so what you're going to do is to minus 2x on both sides, but a shortcut to that is to just put this on the other side, but make sure that when you do that, the sign changes. So right now, the sign is positive. When you move it to the other side, and when I say other side, that means it crosses the equal sign because that divides your space from left to right. So if it crosses the equal sign, it changes the sign like this. Okay. Now notice that the 6 will have to stay on the right side because that's actually your B. So, but the 6 is not going to move to the other side and it's not going to cross that equal sign. It's going to stay there. So, therefore, just copy it down with the plus 6. You're not fully done because you want the y to be by itself. Therefore, this has to be divided by 3, and that's all of them. There is also another way to do it, and that would look like, I'll just rewrite this just to show you the other way. You can divide this by 3 and all of them divide by 3. These two are the same. I usually don't use this because this is much clearer in the sense that I have my slope now and I have my y-intercept. And the only thing that you will have to do now is to simplify. This turns to a 1. This now becomes a y, and this is negative over a positive. That becomes a negative. The whole fraction becomes a negative. Okay. Plus a 2. So now your slope is 2, negative 2 out of 3, and your y-intercept is a 2. So this now is your final answer. There is also an OR to that, and when you divide that by itself, it becomes a 1. So your y can also look like this, negative 2x plus 6 with a denominator of 3, and those two are actually the same. All right, for our example number 2, I have 3x minus 5y equals 10. Again, first step, put the equal sign. Next step, you wanted the y to be by itself. At this time, your y is a negative 5y because they all have signs. So the sign of this is positive, the sign of this is negative, the sign of this is positive. So they all have signs. So once again, you want the y to be by itself. Therefore, you don't want this there. This is a positive 3 right now. So when you move to the other side, it becomes a negative 3. The 10 does not go to the other side. It just goes down. So that's a plus 10. And now I'm done with that. I am now going to divide everything by negative 5. Negative 5. Negative 5, or this an OR. So the OR would look like this. You divide it by negative 5 and just the whole thing. So let's do this first. This now becomes just a y equals negative over negative becomes positive. And negative over positive becomes a negative 2. This now goes away and this becomes negative 3x plus 10 all over negative 5. That's already your answer on that side, but that's the OR. And this one is your answer here. And again, this is your slope, and that's your y-intercept. I know that my example number 3 does not look like a standard form. That is not a standard form. I repeat, it's not a standard form. However, I wanted to show you something like this where your x is negative and your y is a positive. So let's do the same steps. I am going to put my equal sign. I want my y to be here, so this goes down. It remains positive because it didn't cross the equal sign. This, however, will cross the equal sign and will turn to a positive 6x. This won't cross the equal sign. It will just go down. So that's a negative 18. Okay, so right here, I am ready with my or on this side. So let's do this here first. So divide them all by 3. And divide this by 3. This overall is 3. Let's do this first because that's easier. This now is your final answer. That's an or. This is more specific. It's going to give you y equals 2x minus 6. And so in this case, this is your slope. And this negative 6 is your y-intercept. All right, we now go to the next part, which is changing slope-intercept form to standard form. There is a restriction in standard form. The a and the b must always be integers, and a cannot be a negative number. Okay, so let us now go ahead and play around with this one. So my given is y equals 5x minus 2. Just to point out, this is your slope and this is your y-intercept. And so let's go ahead and do this. I need my, my standard form is, just to remind everyone, so that's going to be ax plus by equals c. So I need this to be on the other side. So again, the equal sign will be put first. And that's going to be a negative 5x plus ay. And this stays here, negative 2. We're almost done, except that one of the restrictions is that the a cannot be a negative number. So for us to turn this into a positive, we must either divide everything by a negative 1 or multiply everything by a negative 1. Either way will be fine. I choose to multiply. So I'm going to multiply everything by a negative 1, all of them, and this as well. Multiply this by a negative 1. When you multiply this by a negative 1, you will distribute, okay? You're not just going to multiply the first one by the negative 1. You will multiply everything by negative 1. So this turns to a positive 5x. Negative 1 times positive 1y is a negative 1y or a negative y. Negative 2 times negative 1 is a positive 2. And that is it. That's my standard form. And just to point out, your A here is 5, your B is negative 1, and your C is a 2. Okay, so my next example is y equals 3/4 x plus 1. Ooh, there are many ways to do this, but okay, let's go ahead and stick to what we said, which is equal sign. Move this. I just wanted to be consistent with what I taught you so that you don't get confused so much. So I did the same thing. So I moved the positive 3/4 to the other side. It becomes negative 3/4. And the y went down, the 1 went down. There are a lot of complications here. First of all, the restriction says that a cannot be negative and a and b cannot be integers. I mean, cannot be fractions. They should be integers. So I need to remove the 4 and I need to remove the negative sign. So let's do this one by one. Let me remove the 4 first. The way to remove the denominator is, since that's divide, the inverse of divide is to multiply. So I'm multiplying all of them by a 4. All of them. Okay? All of them meaning you will distribute this to this to that, and this to that. Okay, so let's do this. The moment you multiply a 4 with a fraction that has a denominator 4, that becomes a 1 already. So now this side just becomes negative 3x. All right? That's just for that term. Now, the 4 will be multiplied by 1 because there's a 1 there. I told you that already. I don't have to write that down. So plus a 4y now because you distributed. And then this is equals 4. All right? We're almost done. I just have to get rid of the negative sign. So I multiply them all by a negative 1. And I'm being so specific here because actually here you can go straight and multiply this all by a negative 4. I did not do that because that might confuse some of you. So anyways, let's go back here. So negative times a negative is now a positive. Negative times a positive is a negative or a minus 4y. Positive times a negative is a negative 1, and that's already your standard form, where your A is a 3, your B is a negative 4, and your C is a negative 1. Okay, correction. This is supposed to be a negative 4, and that makes your C a negative 4. Okay, my third and final example for this one is y equals negative 2x plus 7. Okay, so first step, equal sign. Second step, the x should join the y on the other side, so the negative turns to a. Positive, this goes down. And this just goes down. As you can see, the a and the b are both integers. And the a is positive, so there are nothing to do here. This is it already. That's your final answer. Okay, that's a 7. And in this case, your a is a 2, your y is a 1, and your c is a 7. Okay, I'm sorry guys, I'm being very, very careless today. So that's a B.